Hey everyone. So in our previous videos, we've understood the concepts of hierarchy, we've understood symmetry, we've understood alignment. So for today's exercise, today's workshop, let us try and go through a couple of more ways in which you can tweak your poster in order to improve the presentation of your poster. So this is something that we covered in our previous exercises, in our previous workshops, very briefly. Whenever you are having content, try and ensure that you are having the content that is aligned to a specific alignment. So over here, they've asked you to align all of this information to the left. Let us do that. And I take this team to I align it to the left. Okay, and they also say try and reduce the number of colors that are there to a maximum of 2 colors. Again, this is something that you will notice. Try and ensure that the colors that you are choosing for your text or for your elements are not far too many, that they do not give you this essence of confusion. So over here they ask you to change it. Ask you to change this to white and this number to yellow. Similarly, whenever you have information, whenever you have an image and you have information over that image, in order to make that information clear, sometimes what you can also do is you can actually scale down the image itself. So over here you can see that in order to signify that there is nature, they have a background image that is slightly blurred, but the word nature is not as clear, especially in this white area. So instead of that, what you could do is you could actually just resize this image this way. So it gives you that essence or that vibe of nature with just that small line or that bar that has the green stuff that is blurred in the background, and then you have your title and your R, the word R behind. So whenever you have an image that has a lot going on in it, it's very colorful, but you only want to use it to convey that essence or that creativity or whatever. Over here in this case it's environment. Try and reduce the amount of the picture that is there in the poster, because remember, whenever you create a poster, you also want to convey a certain aspect, a certain thing to the viewer, right? And oftentimes that is conveyed through text or through your other elements on the poster. So identify why the image is there, whether it is only for adding color or adding context to it, or whether that's actually the poster, and accordingly scale it up to define how much space it needs to occupy. Another very important and interesting way in which you can spruce up your posters is by ensuring that when you have images, try and ensure that there does exist space between your images. I've seen a lot of times people, when they are putting text, they directly, touch it uh, uh, to the image that is there to the side, or sometimes even on the right to the edge of the poster. So try and ensure that there is a certain amount of distance from each and every one of these elements, because what it does is it gives a sense of it gives the viewer a sense of a well balanced or well spaced out poster when you've taken into consideration all the spacing between the text and between the images and stuff. So make sure for each and every one of the elements, unless forceful or unless by design you want them to overlap, other than that time, make sure that there is specific amount of space around your elements, and it's almost either ways as equidistant as possible. Now, one of the things that I've noticed, and I've said this in our previous exercise, if you do have information that is too small, scale it up to a point that it is visible to your audience. If you cannot do that, try and reduce the amount of text that is there So in this case, we will experiment by pushing this downwards, this information downwards. So I've got the bullets here, which is something I don't want. Yes. So in a situation like this, I have pushed, let me indent this to align with the top text. Yes. So over here you can see what I've done is I've made sure that the information has been scaled to a point that it is visible directly, that the individual or the viewer does not have to zoom in into the poster to read the text. In case you feel, now for example over here you have one line for each of these text, and then all of a sudden here you have 3 lines. So sometimes when you are in a situation like this, try and reduce the amount of information that is there in your poster. Okay, in case you reach a point, for example here, where there is so much of information in just this one poster, and it is difficult to even scale it up, because the moment you scale it up, it will go out of your the space that you have in your poster. Then what you do is you can go and you can actually create. Considering you had a pro version, you had the opportunity of using this resize feature, wherein what you could do is after you've created a poster, you could resize it after the poster dimensions have been defined. But if not, what you can also do is you can go back to home and you can do create design. And when you do create design, you can choose a custom poster. For example, if you want a lot of information to put on the lengthwise, you can use the poster template. And then whatever your information is, and whatever is there in that poster, you just copy all of it, Control C, you go to your poster with the right dimensions of the base poster, and then you scale it up and you arrange it in a way that it actually fits over here. So now, because I have increased the size of this poster, I can remove this background. I can shift this text a little bit lower. Yes, I'm going to delete this background image. I can change this. I can increase the size of this. I can then scale it up. And I can also go forth, because it's a longer this, and increase the line height so that it fits this size of the poster appropriately. You see? So in case you have a lot of information that you want to put in a poster, use a bigger dimension of your posters. You have multiple options that you can choose from your create when you go to home, and you can create. You have all these templates, or you even have these where you can see the dimensions at the bottom over here. They are actually showing what the dimensions are in terms of pixels, in terms of centimeters, or if you know exactly what size you want, you can go to custom dimensions. Okay, now when you have an image and you have a lot of information that is there in your image, okay, over here, if I wanted to increase the readability of an image, I've told you multiple ways in which you can do it. One of it is you can add a semi-transparent background behind this text. Then the other aspect is you could put a solid color behind this text, or you could change the color of the text that is to make it contrasting to the background of the image. Another way you can also do it is if you go to adjust, you can increase the blur. And when you increase the blur of the image, you're still giving the essence. When somebody sees this image, they can see that there is an image of a guy that is standing with his hands apart and looking at a mountain and stuff. But at the same time, because of the blur, this text becomes more visible. So this is a small trick that I thought I would share. If you want to put text on an image that it is difficult to read it in terms of in case you have an image that has far too much texture and far too much color in it. Similarly, whenever you have an image and you want to put text in that image, try and search for open spaces that exist to put your image. Don't try and, for example, take this text and put it over here. Now, over here, you could, of course, go and make it blurred, or you could, of course, put a solid color behind it and stuff. But at the same time, if I wanted, I could also arrange this text in this open space. So identify what the open spaces are in your poster, and accordingly put your text in the open spaces that exist. Okay, use that as a way. You see, I have aligned it to the left, and this arrangement is giving me almost the same curve as that of this mountain. So I'm trying to complement that curve of the mountain with the text curve to kind of create a sort of uniformity in the spacing between the mountain and the text alignment. So that is why I aligned it to the left. So like I said, make sure you are using these spaces in an image, in a photograph, to put your text in the poster. Another thing you'll also notice is whenever you use, first and foremost, when you're using objects that you want a certain focus on, okay, for especially this comes in handy when you want to show people, say for example, you have a poster and you have somebody that you're congratulating, or say for example, you have your XCOM group that you want, you are putting the images in a frame, and you want to say for example, president or VP ad and stuff. So make sure that what is the main focus of that image, of that frame. Understand that. If it's, say for example, a president, your main focus would actually be his face, right? So when you understand that, double click on it and try and get the object that you want in focus into the frame. Similarly over here, say for example, this was your VP ad. What I would do is I would increase the size of the face in a way that brought it into focus. And also, generally when you have multiple objects or multiple frames, say for example on your XCOM poster, try and make sure that each of the person's faces are of the same size. It should not be like over here, this person's face is big, this person's face is so small that is not visible. If you don't have an image of the person that is usable, ask them. Go reach out to them and ask them, say, hey, I want to make an amazing poster. Please send me a good quality photograph of yours. Okay, so if you double click on an image, you can then zoom in and scroll in so that the objects actually come in focus. Now you see over here, I have scaled each and every one of these faces to almost equal size. Another rule, this is something that's very common with photographers, is known as the rule of thirds. Now what does the rule of thirds say? The rule of thirds say that if you take any poster or any image and you divide it by 4 lines into if you divide it by 4 lines, the way this grid exists, okay, equidistant lines into all these 9 spaces, what they say is that if you put your object of focus, whatever you want the viewer to see first, at the intersections, at these points of intersection, that is where generally your image or the viewer's attention goes to the first. And so if you can see in these examples, what they have done, or the photographer has done, is he's actually got the person or the object of focus at these points, 1, 2, 3, 4. You can see over here, he's put the face over here. You can see over here, and even over here. So that is generally a thumb rule that defines whether an object in the poster actually gets the right, when a viewer views it, that's the first thing that he or she sees. Okay, or the other option is also put it in say for example the center. So over here you can see in this image over here, this object or these people are in the center. So this is for photographs. The same thing actually applies for a poster as well. Say for example you want to say we take this template that exists over here. If I were to divide this poster into using 4 lines, what you would see is at this point over here, this would actually be one of the points. So at this point over here, they have put the image of the dad and probably his son. Okay. Similarly over here, if you come over here, they've started "You're the best ever." Similarly over here, all the major information of this text or the focus points are actually at the 4 intersection points of that grid. So when you are creating your posters, whatever you want the viewer to focus first at, try and visually imagine that grid on your poster, and at those intersection points, put your content or put what you want the viewer to focus on. Now, another aspect of poster making is oftentimes because of RTI brand guidelines, you might say, I cannot use landscapes in my poster, right? But I still want to create an interesting poster. How do I do that? Well, there are various ways in which you can do it. Now, one of the things that I often do is that in case I don't have a photograph that I can use for a poster or for any other purposes, use abstract images. For example, if you wanted to talk about, say, a rainy day, okay, what you could do is say, take for example, use this template. Now, I cannot ignore the font brand guidelines. Let me ignore this. Okay. Now these objects that are there or these elements are not brand compliant. So what I will do is I can also choose, say for example, I want a different background. Okay, so let me choose this template. Let me copy this background and let me paste it over here. Now this can actually signify, in a way, the rains, these small objects that are there. And just like that, you will have a poster using abstract, using abstract objects to define and give relevance to the theme of your poster. For example, I could say now it's the monsoons. So if this was the theme of your day, the theme of your meeting, okay. So this is a bit small for the title. So what I could do is I could scale it up to create hierarchy. All of it is center aligned, so I will stick to center alignment. I don't like the yellow color, so what I could do is I could go to Toastmaster brand guidelines. I could go through their visual brand guideline and I can search for, say for example, blue color. Go back and change this color to the brand compliant blue color. This we can change, the text we can change to white. We can say Anaphons, speakers, club, or whatever. So my point being is you can use abstract objects in order to define or give relevance to the theme of your poster. Okay, so keep this small trick in mind when you're creating posters and you cannot find a brand compliant image that you want to use in your poster. The last trick for today I want to talk to you all about is spacing. Now, in a poster, it is important that you, apart from having text and images and elements all around, it is very important for you to have space between the elements. And I explained to you that the elements need to have relevant space from the edges and stuff. But over and about, what they generally say is that your entire poster needs to have roughly about 40% of white space, or 40% of space that is there between all the elements. Whenever you have an image or a poster that has that amount of space, it feels like it is a balanced poster. If you increase the amount of space in a poster, it tends towards the minimalist side of a poster. So I will share with you, and I will share with you a poster that I've created for our group meeting that is happening on the 28th of June. Okay, and if you see, I have not put any background. I've just put just the text and the information, the relevant information. So that kind of an information, that kind of a poster would actually be something that falls slightly, not too much, but slightly into the minimalist side. If you want to go even further into the minimalist side, you will reduce the thickness of your fonts and increase the amount of spacing that exists in your poster. Now, on the flip side, if you decide to go away from this 40% rule and actually reduce the amount of spacing that exists in your poster will come across as much more crowded, much more cluttered. Okay, now if that is something that you're trying to do by design, for example, if you want to talk about how life can get extremely cluttered in case you don't sit down to meditate or sit down to arrange or think about your life or productivity, etc., then it makes sense to have a cluttered poster. But by default, try and ensure that there's a balance of white space in your poster, and you decide which direction it tilts, whether it's around 40% or whether it tilts towards minimalism or tilts towards the crowded, much more cluttered poster. Okay, so that's the last concept for today. I hope you enjoyed listening to this, and I will share the exercise shortly.